Taste this shit, sin.
What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to another episode of the JT Sports Podcast. I'm your host, JT. I was outside earlier, and I just felt football in the air. We are 11 days away until training camp tees off, and we are 29 days away until football is back. The Hall of Fame game is on August the 6th between the Arizona Cardinals and the Carolina Panthers. And don't let anybody tell you that preseason football is meaningless. It doesn't matter, because over here on JT Sports, when you go 6 months being starved of football, the preseason, even if it is the Hall of Fame game and you're watching a bunch of practice squad, third and fourth string guys, that thing is like the freaking Super Bowl over here. So even if it's preseason football, we're treating that thing as the real thing, because, I mean, the guys are putting on helmets and pads and they're going out there playing football. So if it's not real football, just exactly what is it, man? And we're on the clock until football is finally back. And speaking about being on the clock, we got to talk about 10 NFL players that are on the clock entering this season, along with the Kansas City Chiefs having to teach the AFC West a hard lesson. And they got to give the AFC West a little bit of humbling, because a lot of Broncos and Chargers fans think that this division is theirs for the taking. And they think that one down season out of 10 years of dominance means that it's over for Kansas City. They got to humble them, man. And it's now or never for the LA Chargers. We'll dive into why this is their best shot to win the Super Bowl. We got to expose a few uncomfortable truths about a few generational receivers. Marvin Harrison Jr., a.k.a. MHJ, and Jeremiah Smith. And how good are the Dallas Cowboys going to be this season coming up? If you live, eat, breathe, sleep, and die football, congratulations, you have arrived at the right place. We're talking all things football, NFL, college football, 24/7, 365 days throughout the year. If you're a football junkie, smash that like button, subscribe, turn on post notifications so you can get your daily football fix in. And without further ado, let's dive into it. We have to break down the 10 players entering this season that are on the clock. These are players that, if they don't perform this season, it could be their last year ever playing in the NFL. They could find themselves playing in a reduced role next year. Some of these guys could end up not playing well this season and go from being starters to backups on another team. What are the 10 players on the clock entering the 2026 NFL season? Obviously, we got to start off with Deshaun Watson entering his fourth season with the Browns now, and just has been one of the worst investments, one of the worst trades in NFL history. The Browns gave up a boatload of picks to get him. They gave him $230 million fully guaranteed, and he's been one of the worst quarterbacks in the league. And if he can't even beat out Shedeur Sanders in training camp, then we'll never see Deshaun Watson ever start in the NFL again. We probably might not ever see Deshaun Watson play for another team again. Maybe the UFL might pick him up, but if he can't get it done this year in Cleveland, he will be out the league. Nobody's going to give him a shot. The only reason he's still on the Browns, despite the despicable acts that he committed in the offseason a few years ago, is because he has them trapped. They gave the brother $230 fully million guaranteed, and until this final season plays out, they can't really get rid of him. So either Deshaun Watson has the greatest comeback story in NFL history, or this is the last year that we see Deshaun Watson in the NFL. Rashod Bateman in 2024 had a career season, career highs and receiving yards, touchdowns. The Ravens felt good enough to give him a contract extension despite his career getting out to a slow start, inconsistent play, unable to stay healthy, durability concerns. Then 2024, he put it all together, and the Ravens felt like, okay, Rashod Bateman has finally arrived. And then the 2025 season comes around, and it's back to the basics for Rashod Bateman. Struggled to stay healthy, even when he was on the field, was not productive, had some big third down drops throughout the year for the Baltimore Ravens. And with the new coaching staff, Rashod Bateman, he has no guarantees that he's going to start this year. And it also doesn't help that the Ravens also double-dipped that receiver in the draft, taking Elijah Surratt and Jacoby Lane, which both of those guys are good enough to compete for immediate playing time, and those two guys are threats to still Rashod Bateman's starting job. So if he doesn't handle up in training camp in a few weeks and he gets his starting job taken, he could find himself no longer being a starter in this league, and he probably still ends up getting opportunities, but he's more of a wide receiver 4 or wide receiver 5 than being a wide receiver 3 or 2 on Baltimore. He's more of a rotational receiver than he is an actual key contributor. Will Campbell is on the clock because when a team invests a top 10 pick into you at offensive tackle, you struggle your rookie season. If you struggle a second straight season, then we already know where Will Campbell's going. This place where everybody thought he should have started his NFL career at, which is offensive guard, due to his short arms. And last season wasn't all bad. Mainly his play went down when he tried to come back from injury, even though he wasn't 100%. And he became one of the worst offensive tackles in the league. And the Seattle Seahawks were having an all-you-can-sack buffet on Drake May in the Super Bowl, thanks to Will Campbell sponsoring that thing. I still believe in Will Campbell. I still believe he can become an elite offensive tackle, but the brother has to produce this year. Last season, it was your rookie year. You played through injuries. You can respect that. Year 2, no more excuses. You get no more grace. You got to go out there and protect the franchise guy, because if not, they already drafted Caleb Lemieux. They'll plug him probably at left tackle, and Will Campbell will be sliding to one of those offensive guard spots. And that would be a huge detriment to Will Campbell's career, because offensive tackles are one of the highest paid positions in the league, and him having to move from left tackle to guard would be him taking a huge pay decrease. Next up, I have Xavier Legette. If you're a casual NFL fan, you may not know who this guy is, but he was a first-round pick by the Carolina Panthers 2 seasons ago. It was ill-advised for the Panthers to draft him as high as what they did, since he was a developmental guy, had very good physical traits, though, good size, ran the 4.3 something, the 40-yard dash. And, you know, if you were the Carolina Panthers seeing this, you're thinking to yourself, we can teach a guy how to catch. We can teach a guy how to run routes. Well, that hasn't really gone to plan for the Carolina Panthers. And with them drafting Chris Brazil, just extending Jalen Coker, you got Ted McMillan entering year 2. Jimmy Horn Jr. could be in for a breakout season. You know, if Xavier Legette doesn't shine in training camp and in the preseason, he could find himself buried on the Carolina Panthers depth chart. And he's not a bad player. It's just he hasn't been good for where the Carolina Panthers drafted him at. And a lot of Panthers fans were a little bit skeptical of the decision to draft him, since he wasn't the most polished guy, and a lot of the fans are always super skeptical about guys that are being drafted because of traits and potential more so than actual production, immediate impact. And Xavier Legette is another case study of guys that get overdrafted because of size, because of 40 times, with the belief that they can be developed, and they just never really pan out. So this is a career-defining season for Xavier Legette. Marlon Humphrey is getting up there in age, man. Marlon Humphrey is a seasoned vet. He's one of the membranes of the Baltimore Ravens franchise. And the Baltimore Ravens are one of those organizations that they want to do right by guys that they drafted. And they normally keep guys like Marlon Humphrey around until their pay doesn't meet the demand for their level of production on the field. And we're starting to get to that point with Marlon Humphrey. Some Ravens fans thought he would have been a potential cap casualty this offseason, but they decided to keep him around. Despite having the worst season of his career, he gave up a career high in yards, touchdowns, catches. It just wasn't a good season for Marlon Humphrey. Going into this season, you're getting up there in age. You're getting to that age when everybody starts viewing you as a diminishing asset. And if you don't bounce back from last season, you can fire Marlon Humphrey being a cap casualty at the end of this season and playing for another team unless he ends up taking a pay cut. And it's very uncharacteristic for the Ravens to move on from guys like Marlon Humphrey. They're one of those franchises that they normally draft you and you retire a Baltimore Ravens, but they have let guys go in the past because they were asking for too much and their play didn't warrant the pay. And we could be approaching that conversation with Marlon Humphrey if he doesn't shake back this season coming up. Chris Jones has gone 2 straight seasons now without having double-digit sacks. And last season, that loss to the Jacksonville Jaguars when he pretty much gave up on the play, allowed Trevor Lawrence to get what was then the game-winning touchdown. That was a sign that Chris Jones, Father Time, not only is he knocking on the door, but he has completely broken that thing off the hinges, and he's coming to collect. Now with Kansas City, is Chris Jones diminishing to the point you can't even make him a starter, or is he still diminishing but still a starting caliber player? We will see this season coming up, because with how many new pieces the Chiefs have on defense this year, they need Chris Jones to shake back. He's 32 years old. He's not getting any younger. He's not getting any faster or better at that. And one of the core pieces of the Chiefs dynasty is starting to age out, just like how Travis Kelce is. But if Chris Jones doesn't at least get you 9 sacks this year, we know that this season pretty much is going to be a retirement tour, at least when it comes to him wearing a Chiefs uniform. Next up, I got my boy Jalen Ramsey. Jalen Ramsey, future Hall of Famer, one of the best cornerbacks of this generation. Unfortunately, last season, he was a shell of himself. He started out playing corner. Then after getting toasted and shredded up by Jamar Chase on Thursday Night Football, the Steelers made the smart decision to start playing him more at safety. And he was pretty good at safety, but you could still see the age. The guy got burnt twice in the season finale for the AFC North title against the Baltimore Ravens. Damn near gave the Ravens the win if it wasn't for the field goal kicker blessing them. So Jalen Ramsey this year, we don't really know how he's going to be used with the Steelers' new coaching staff, their new defensive coordinator. Are they going to play him more at nickel, or are they still going to play him a lot at safety, despite the signing of Jaquan Brisker, Deshaun Elliott coming back fully healthy? We really don't know, but I know for sure Jalen Ramsey's days as a boundary outside perimeter corner are over, because anytime you see Jalen Ramsey guarding a wide receiver like Jamar Chase, A.J. Brown, and one-on-one coverage, it's automatic whoever offense on Jalen Ramsey. It's so sad that we've gotten to this point, but it seems like anytime Jalen Ramsey lines up on the outside of that corner, they're running whoever offense on him. So if Jalen Ramsey can't get it together this season, man, I think this could be his final year playing in the NFL. He's already done played, 10 years in the league already? Next up, we got Coleridge Bernard Stroud. Now, a lot of you guys know him by CJ Stroud, but we're not going to call him CJ Stroud until he earns that name back. For the time being, his name is Coleridge Bernard Stroud because CJ Stroud, for some reason, ever since his rookie season, he just has regressed every year since. And it's not all on him. The offensive line wasn't that good. They had no run game. The play calling still really isn't that great. But this season, the Texans have a defense that is good enough to win the championship as long as CJ Stroud doesn't F it up. In the playoffs last year, CJ Stroud effed it up, and that's why the Texans weren't playing for the Lombardi. This year, if CJ Stroud can just take care of the football, stay healthy, and play efficient, decisive football, the Texans should, at least at the bare minimum, get to the AFC Championship. And if not, then it's going to be because of CJ Stroud. He also is in a contract year. And he was asked about, not getting an extension this offseason. Will Anderson, however, in the process of getting one. And CJ Stroud pretty much knew that he didn't deserve it, but he pretty much tried to say, I still believe I deserve to get paid. But he knows what's on the line for him this season. He knows that this is a very pivotal season coming up in his young career. Marvin Harrison Jr. is the first player that should be considered a bust that fans are hesitant to label a bust just because of the pedigree. He comes from the wide receiver factory, which is Ohio State. He also has football bloodlines coming from Marvin Harrison, one of the greatest wide receivers of his time to play. So there's a lot more patience, a lot longer of a grace period for Marvin Harrison Jr. to figure it out than there is for most that were drafted in his position. You can blame the quarterback. You can blame the Arizona Cardinals being the Arizona Cardinals, but Marvin Harrison Jr. has to show us something. In 2 seasons, he only has 2 100-yard performances. He has yet to register a 1,000-yard campaign, and he also has been outshined by Malik Neighbors and Brian Thomas Jr., who were drafted behind Marvin Harrison. So if you have 2 guys you were drafted ahead of outperforming you, and you don't put it together in year 3, man, then you got no choice but to label the brother a generational bust. We were quick to call Trevor Lawrence a generational bust, but we call Marvin Harrison a generational can't-miss wide receiver, and now all of a sudden, we want to give him a little bit more time. We want to find all these other excuses outside of calling him a bust. Come on, man. DeAndre Hopkins came into the league with Tom Savage and a bunch of randos throwing him the football, and he still was putting up 1,000-yard campaigns before getting Deshaun Watson. Justin Jefferson just had a 1,000-yard season with J.J. McCarthy, Carson Wentz, and some dude named Max Brosmer out of Minnesota throwing him the football. So what's the excuse for Marvin Harrison Jr.? Kyler Murray is a lot better than what the hell the Vikings had at quarterback last year. He's a lot better than what the hell the DeAndre Hopkins had throwing the football to him early in Houston. I mean, DJ Moore had a 1,300-yard season his first year in Chicago with Justin Fields throwing him the pill. So what's the excuse for Marvin Harrison? I still believe in him, but eventually, man, belief only goes so far until you're not showing it on the field, man. So this is it for Marvin Harrison. That brother's definitely on the clock. If he doesn't show us something, he doesn't at least get 900 receiving yards this season, you got to call the bus. You got to call the brother, unfortunately, a generational bust. And lastly is Kyler Murray. I believe Kyler Murray is going to be this year's Sam Darnold. Like Sam Darnold, he showed a lot of promise in his early years with the Arizona Cardinals. We seem to forget how good Kyler Murray was his first 3 years in Arizona. Won Offensive Rookie of the Year, was a Pro Bowler his first 3 seasons, and also was the front runner for MVP the first half of his 3rd year until the Cardinals fell off the top of the cliff. So Kyler Murray with Kevin O'Connell, one of the better quarterback whisperers in the league, in a very good situation with good receivers, a good offensive line, a great defense to support him. Kyler Murray has to ball out and ball out big for Minnesota, since this is a very crucial year for not just him, but Kevin O'Connell. He could be on the hot seat. So the Minnesota Vikings last season won 9 games with some of the worst quarterback play in the league. If Kyler Murray is at least slightly above average, the Vikings should win at least 10 games, and they should be a wild card team with the possibility of being able to maybe win a playoff game or two. These are the 10 NFL players that are on the clock entering the 2026 NFL season. Let me know the guys that you agree with, disagree, and some guys that were left off the list that you feel should have been included. Shout out to everybody that's tuned in, whether you're live, tuned in on YouTube, or you're listening to the replay on podcasting platforms. We appreciate you for tuning in. If you're currently tapped in on YouTube, do us a favor. Smash that like button, subscribe to the channel, hit that bell icon if you're new. We're talking all things football, NFL, college football, 24/7, 365 days throughout the year. If you're just a football junkie and you got to get your daily football fix in, subscribe, turn on post notifications so you don't miss when we drop new content. Also, remember that we are not just a YouTube channel. We are a podcast. You can find this episode along with all of our previous episodes in audio format wherever you get your podcast from. The JT Sports Podcast is available. The links are down in the description below. If you enjoy the content, you want to support the grind, all we ask is that you rate the JT Sports Podcast 5 stars wherever you get your podcast from. Once again, the links are down in the description below. Let's continue on. The Kansas City Chiefs are going to humble the AFC West this season in the worst way possible. So I uploaded a clip on TikTok and Instagram a few days ago about how the AFC West, being as stacked as what it is, could cannibalize the Denver Broncos and hurt their chances of being able to win the Super Bowl. And there were a lot of Broncos fans who got offended by that statement. They said that the Chiefs are nothing to worry about anymore. Patrick Mahomes, they're assuming that he's not going to be the same coming back from that season-ending injury last year. And the Chiefs just don't have the firepower. They don't have the horses to be able to compete with the Denver Broncos. The Broncos are today, and Kansas City apparently is yesterday, according to a lot of Broncos fans that were coming at me sideways on TikTok and Instagram. And here's the reality check that I have to give not just you Broncos fans, but a lot of you Chargers fans. One bad year after a decade and some change of running this division doesn't mean that it's over for the Kansas City Chiefs. For a third of my life, I have grown accustomed to seeing the Kansas City Chiefs in the AFC Championship. And I'm not going to write off this franchise because of one down year when they uncharacteristically were awful in one-possession games. The Kansas City Chiefs were 1-9 in one-score games. That's uncharacteristic. The season prior, they were 11-0 in one-score games. Kansas City, at one point, was one of the best teams at being able to win tight football games. Playing a close game against Kansas City at one point was considered a death wish. Now, when you play Kansas City, they don't have that same edge. Or last season, they didn't have that edge. But one thing about losing a bunch of one-score games, it's always easy to flip the result the following season. Just like how Kansas City went from 11-0 in one-score games to 1-9 in one-score games, they can easily flip back to being possibly 9-1 in one-score games, because there were a few games this season Kansas City lost when it wasn't necessarily them losing the talent. It's just that either they had bad untimely penalties, they had crucial late-game mistakes, or the ball just didn't bounce in their favor. I'm more confident that Kansas City bounces back than I am them having another year when they're not in the mix of winning the AFC West or making it to the playoffs. And as good as what the Denver Broncos are, last year you were a team that mostly won your games by one possession. You were 11-2 in one-score games. The best team in the NFL in one-possession games. But with the Denver Broncos, though, there is a little bit of uneasiness at times when you watch Bo Nix. He will miss easy throws, and they had a few close games against teams that they were supposed to dominate, like the New York Giants. They had to have an immaculate comeback to win that game. You barely were able to beat the Las Vegas Raiders. So as easy as it is to count out Kansas City because they went 1-5 in the division, you had the number 1 seed, you're dropping your nuts, letting them hang because you're coming into this year the defending AFC West champions. Kansas City can easily humble you, man. Kansas City is the last franchise that anybody, especially fans of teams in this division, should be writing off. And I know you're so eager to write off Kansas City because they've been running this thing for over a decade and some change. So one down year, it's easy to run with that and think this is the new Kansas City Chiefs. No, this is the beginning of the third phase of the Kansas City Chiefs dynasty. And what the Chiefs have had to do in this third phase of maintaining their dynasty is they've had to figure out who are going to be their new faces to lead the next phases of the dynasty, which is R. Mason Thomas, Mansour Delane. Those are the new faces that are going to be the leaders the next 3-4 years when we see Kansas City back running the AFC, back winning Super Bowls again. Because like the Patriots had a little brief stint when they weren't in the mix of winning the AFC or winning the Super Bowl. Then eventually they went on to go back to dominating the AFC and winning more champions. Eventually it's going to happen. And right now, the AFC West is getting a little bit too comfortable after one bad season from the Kansas City Chiefs. It's unrealistic to expect Kansas City to go 1-5 and divisional play again. That's not going to happen again. That doesn't erase nearly a decade of dominance in this division. Everybody's treating one down season as if it's definitive proof that the Chiefs dynasty is over. The Chiefs don't need the most talented team to win it all. They've already proved that. You probably thought it was over after Kansas City traded away Tyreek Hill. You probably thought there was no way in hell Kansas City was going to be winning Super Bowls with Kadarius Toney, Sky Moore, Juju Smith-Schuster, and they went on to win back-to-back. They nearly three-peated after they traded away Tyreek Hill. Hell, Tom Brady and the Patriots were winning Super Bowls with professional lacrosse players being one of their go-to guys. You don't need to have the most talented team to win it all when you're a team like Kansas City. The most important pieces are still there, Mahomes and Andy Reid, but they brought back Eric Bieniemy, the guy who was one of the main cogs during the earlier phases of Kansas City's dynasty. You bring him back. You sign Kenneth Walker, who's going to bring a different identity to Kansas City's offense that we've never seen Kansas City have during the course of this Mahomes-Andy Reid dynasty. The close game records are screaming that regression could be imminent. We just saw Kansas City go from 11-0 in one-score games to being 1-9 in one-score games, and somehow, some way, Denver Broncos fans believe that their team is above that. They believe that their team can avoid the regression. No, you're not above anything. The same thing that happened to Kansas City could happen to you as well. What makes you feel like you deserve this entitlement to where you deserve the benefit of a doubt that you're going to win a division over Kansas City and everybody else? No, this is a new season. I love the Denver Broncos. I love me some Bo Nix. I definitely love me some Sean Payton, but you got to prove yourself again. Kansas City gets the benefit of a doubt. When the AFC runs through Arrowhead for nearly a decade, you're damn right Kansas City deserves the benefit of a doubt. And they've nailed it in the draft. Anytime you write off Kansas City, they come back stronger. And you're writing off Patrick Mahomes, assuming that he's not going to be the same player because when he suffered that season-ending injury, he was already somewhat declining. Patrick Mahomes is one of the greatest that ever played this game. And you want to know what separates the greats from all the Hall of Very Good players and all the players that were just average? The all-time greats, every time adversity hits, they always come back better. When Tom Brady tore his ACL, guess what happened? He came back stronger. When an all-time great faces adversity, every time they come back from it, they always come back stronger. And I've been screaming this at you guys all offseason long that I would be shocked if Patrick Mahomes doesn't play in week 1. This guy is not normal. This guy is not human. If this was any other team, sure, I would understand where Broncos fans are coming from. But this is the Kansas City Chiefs. These guys have been the dark lords of the NFL for over a decade. So I do think that it's a little insane to just assume that Mahomes is not going to bounce back to what he used to be prior to that injury, prior to last season. I expect for Patrick Mahomes to bounce back because he's one of the greatest to ever play, and the all-time greats, every time you knock them down, when they get back up, they come back 10 times harder and 100 times stronger. And it's still the Chiefs at the end of the day. They've already proven that they don't need the best roster in the league to win it all. And that statement still holds true. I think that the Broncos have a lot more to prove than what the Chiefs have, but I understand where a lot of Broncos fans are coming from, but I'm telling you that you guys are going to be extremely disappointed if you wholeheartedly believe that last season was the beginning of the end of the Chiefs dynasty. We've seen this story too many times with the Patriots and too many times with Patrick Mahomes. We have counted this team out, and all they've done is make us look stupid. And you want to do it again? You want to play this game again, Broncos fans? Okay, we'll see how it works out for you, but there's a reason why the Chiefs are favored to win the AFC West, and you have the third best odds to win the division, right behind them and the Chargers. And there's a reason why market makers, despite how bad the Chiefs were, are right back on the Chiefs bandwagon. They know something that a lot of you guys are missing when it comes to the Kansas City Chiefs, and that is you cannot keep this franchise down for long. You cannot keep Patrick Mahomes down for long. Until Patrick Mahomes can't run anymore, that brother's still going to be raising hell, and he's still going to be the dude who decides who wins the AFC. I think that this season coming up, it's now or never for the Los Angeles Chargers. Hiring Mike McDaniel as your new offensive coordinator is the equivalent to going to a drive-thru of a fast food place and ordering a limited edition item. You got to take advantage of it while it's there because it's not going to last for long. Mike McDaniel is one of the best offensive minds in the NFL. He is going to elevate Justin Herbert to a level that he has never played at before. He could be good enough to win MVP this year. He could be good enough to finally look as good in the playoffs as what he does in the regular season. And Mike McDaniel, this hire could be what makes the LA Chargers an AFC champion contender. Hiring Mike McDaniel changes everything for the Chargers this season coming up as far as the level of play that we're going to see out of this offense and the expectations for this team. If the Chargers don't at least make it to the AFC Championship this year, this would be a huge disappointment because guys like Mike McDaniel, you can't keep them around long because they normally end up getting head coaching jobs, and Mike McDaniel had a few head coaching opportunities that he turned down for this opportunity because Justin Herbert, with the physical traits that he possesses, the arm, the athleticism, Mike McDaniel knows that if he has this guy balling out this season, he will have an opportunity to be an NFL head coach again in a way better situation than the one that he inherited with the Miami Dolphins. If the Chargers make a deep playoff run and this ends up becoming a top 5 offense as I expect it to be, he's going to get a lot of head coaching looks again, and the Chargers are going to have to find another offensive coordinator on par with him, which is going to be a very difficult job because guys like Mike McDaniel don't come available that often. So you have to get the most out of Mike McDaniel while you have him right now because this is a limited edition item that you have at offensive coordinator. He is not going to be around for long. And this might finally be the peak of the Jim Harbaugh, Justin Herbert Super Bowl window because everybody always talks about what decides if a team's Super Bowl window is open or closed. They often get confused with the quarterback play being what decides if a team's window is open or not. It's not really the quarterback play. It's really the coordinators. Look at the Philadelphia Eagles. When the Philadelphia Eagles won the Super Bowl a year or two ago, They had Kellen Moore, who overachieved last season, year one as the Saints head coach with a rookie that nobody had any high expectations for. And when they made it to the Super Bowl, their first time with Jalen Hurts and Nick Sirianni, both of their coordinators ended up becoming head coaches. So a team's Super Bowl window isn't necessarily all about how good the quarterback is, how talented is the roster. It more so comes down to how good the coaching staff is. And in spite of how good of a coach Jim Harbaugh is, he's only going to go as far as where his offensive coordinator and defensive coordinator can take them. The defensive coordinator that's replacing Jesse Mentor should be pretty good because the Harbaughs have a very good eye for building good coaching staffs. So I trust that whoever is replacing Jesse Mentor is going to be pretty solid. But Mike McDaniel as your OC, though, gives you a different ceiling that you haven't had in all your years being in the NFL. I think that this is the best opportunity that the Chargers have had in the history of their franchise of actually being able to make it out of the AFC because they have the talent. They don't have a lot of household names, but Tuli Tuipulotu was one of the best interior defensive linemen in the league, and not a lot of people know how good this guy is. You bring up that name, not only do people not know how to pronounce it, but they probably go, who is this guy? Yeah, this guy is the boss. There were a lot of good players on the Chargers that nobody knows of. The only good players that the casual fans know about when it comes to the Chargers are Justin Herbert, Khalil Mack, and Derwin James. There are a lot of good football players on this team. And the team's good enough to win it all. It just really comes down to, can Mike McDaniel make life easier for Justin Herbert? Can he simplify things for Justin Herbert in the postseason? He already is working on improving Justin Herbert's anticipation, being able to get the football out a lot faster than what he has in years past. This offseason, he's been working on Justin Herbert's footwork from out of the shotgun because he believes that if he can improve that, then Justin Herbert will have at least a millisecond or two to throw the football a lot quickly, which will allow his receivers to have more time to figure out what they're going to do after the catch. And it also decreases the amount of time that you're asking an offensive line that gave up a league-high 263 pressures and the second most sacks in the league, a lot less to have to protect Justin Herbert. Mike McDaniel, the scheme that he's going to run with the Chargers is going to be completely different from the scheme he was handicapped to having to run with Tua because he designed that scheme to overcome the limitations Tua had. Justin Herbert doesn't really have any physical limitations. All of Justin Herbert's limitations are somewhat mental and what's around him. The offensive line is back healthy. You got your two starting offensive tackles back, Joe Alt and Rashawn Slater. You added Tyler Biadasz in free agency. We don't know how your two guard spots are going to turn out, but I'm pretty sure you're going to end up figuring that out because it's hard to see a Jim Harbaugh coach team being bad on the line of scrimmage for a second consecutive season. This should be the best offense of the Jim Harbaugh era. You have one of the best offensive minds in the league who gets his hands on so many talented playmakers. Marlon Hampton and Keaton Mitchell are going to be the Lightning and Thunder running back duo in the league this year. Marlon Hampton is the runaway train. He missed a good amount of his rookie season due to injuries, but when he was healthy earlier during the season, he was on par for having a very productive rookie season. Keaton Mitchell, I'm very shocked the Ravens allowed him to walk away. He's one of the faster backs in the league. Keaton Mitchell could be the Chargers version of Devon Achane for Mike McDaniel. He has a similar skill set to Devon Achane. He's able to catch the football very well out of the backfield, and he's one of the fastest players in the NFL. Marlon Hampton averaged 4.4 yards per attempt last season as a rookie, despite the offensive line not being healthy and despite not being at full strength himself for the majority of it. And let's not forget about Ladd McConkey. Last year, Ladd McConkey somewhat was a background character in the Chargers offense. He's going to put up prolific numbers this year with Mike McDaniel calling the plays because Mike McDaniel what also makes his offenses so potent is that he schemes guys open. So Justin Herbert doesn't have to wait for a guy to get open. By the time Justin Herbert completes his 3-step drop, somebody's going to be open. And most of the times it's going to be Ladd McConkey. Ladd McConkey has very crafty route running. And he's very good at creating a lot of separation coming in and out of his breaks. So I expect him to motion him, move him around the offense a lot, and to have a similar impact on the Chargers offense as to what Jalen Waddle had, even though he doesn't possess the same speed. You know, the way that I can see Mike McDaniel using Ladd McConkey is a lot similarly to the role that he was using Jalen Waddle. So another wild card exit for the Chargers this year would not only be a failure, it would be one of the biggest failures of the Jim Harbaugh, Justin Herbert regime, because you don't come across offensive coordinators like Mike McDaniel who have the ability to raise your ceiling and your floor and possibly be the difference in you winning it all or not. Because coordinators are a very underrated part in Super Bowl winning teams. The teams that consistently are in the Super Bowl conversation, they always have good coordinators that go on to become head coaches. And they have very good coaching staffs. And the Chargers won double-digit games their last few seasons under Jim Harbaugh. And that's in spite of Justin Herbert not really having the best play calling as far as Greg Roman goes. We know that Greg Roman, this brother can cook up a devastating rushing attack. But this brother's passing concepts, on the other hand, are very elementary-like. So when you go from Greg Roman to Mike McDaniel, yeah, the expectations are to at least get to the second round of the playoffs, but I feel even that would be somewhat of a disappointment, because if you are a Chargers fan, if you look back on this season coming up 6 years from now, and you had the best offense you've ever had during that time with Mike McDaniel, you're going to feel like this was a wasted season if you're not, at the bare minimum, able to get an AFC championship appearance out of it. The Chargers can't go up empty in the playoffs this year. They at least have to make it to the AFC championship, because you should have one of the best offenses in the league. Oh, you're making it seem like it's a guarantee. I mean, look how good Mike McDaniel's offenses were with Tua. And Tua was a quarterback that he inherited. Most head coaches probably wouldn't have even wanted to deal with Tua, with all the limitations he had, with the durability issues that he had. And his offense was so good that he ended up helping Tua scam the Dolphins. This is a now or never year for the LA Chargers. Mike McDaniel is what gives the Chargers a path to winning it all this year. This is why their Super Bowl window is wide open. And it often gets overlooked the importance coordinators play and teams being able to win it all. And when you lose a guy like Mike McDaniel, he oftentimes is very hard to find a good replacement for. And you oftentimes see a little bit of a drop-off when a guy like him leaves. So the Chargers have to take advantage of Mike McDaniel while they have him. Because after this season, depending on just how good Justin Herbert and this offense play, he could be a one-and-done deal. He could be coaching Tampa Bay. He could be coaching the Cincinnati Bengals. For all we know, he might end up coaching the Las Vegas Raiders next year. You never know. So you want to take advantage of having a guy with this level of brilliancy calling plays on offense while he lasts, because you won't have him for no longer than at least 2 seasons. Shout out to everybody that's tuned in. Shout out to my guy, Irish Whisker. He says, "What's up, JT? Thanks for doing your content, brother. Love your unbiased perspective." Hey, man, I appreciate you for tuning in. I appreciate you for all the support. If you guys haven't already, if you live, eat, breathe, sleep, and die football, smash that like button, subscribe to the channel, turn on post notifications so you do not miss when we drop new content. We are talking all things football, NFL, college football, 24/7, 365 days throughout the year. Follow us at JT Sports _ where you can find us on all of our social media platforms, Instagram, X, TikTok. If you have any questions, any topics that you would like discussed on a future episode, add us. at JT Sports _ Instagram, X. Send them in the DMs, and we will get to it. Also, join our Discord server. We want to talk football with you any time of the day, no matter where it's at. Join the JT Sports Discord server. The link is down in the description below as well. Let's continue on. We got to discuss the uncomfortable truth about Marvin Harrison Jr. Marvin Harrison Jr. might be the first player in NFL history that came into the league with this generational talent label, and yet 2 years in, despite not living up to those expectations, nobody wants to call him a bust. But when this was Trevor Lawrence, though, everybody was quick to call him a generational bust, a generational disappointment. But when it comes to Marvin Harrison Jr., though, we're giving him the most grace and the most patience that NFL fans have ever given a player who came into the league with these kinds of expectations. His dad, Marvin Harrison Sr., was one of the best receivers during his time. Marvin Harrison Jr. was one of, if not the best wide receiver that Ohio State has ever produced. And Ohio State is a wide receiver factory. This is the same school that just produced the defending Offensive Player of the Year, along with Chris Carter, who is a Hall of Famer. So Marvin Harrison Jr. enters year 3 with only less than a handful of 100-yard performances, several missed games due to injuries, and has yet to surpass 1,000 yards receiving. Now, the biggest thing that a lot of people are going to say is, oh, Marvin Harrison Jr. didn't have good quarterback play. Kyler Murray isn't the best quarterback in the league, but he damn sure isn't the worst quarterback in the league either. DeAndre Hopkins, when he first came into the league, he was putting up 1,000-yard campaigns with all kinds of random quarterbacks. Justin Jefferson just had 1,000 yards last season with J.J. McCarthy, Carson Wentz, and some rando named Max Brosmer throwing him the football. Malik Neighbors, who was drafted behind MXJ in the same draft class in his rookie season, had 1,200 yards with Tommy DeVito, Drew Lock, and Daniel Jones slinging him the pigskin. So if Malik Neighbors can have a 1,200-yard campaign in his first year with Drew Lock, Daniel Jones, and Tommy DeVito throwing him the football, you can't continue to use the quarterback excuse for Marvin Harrison Jr., especially when this dude was labeled a generational talent. And when you call somebody generational, you essentially are saying that this guy is unusually polished, unusually complete, and should become an elite player at his position a lot faster than you normally see guys at his position come into league. And I think the biggest reason why everybody is so reluctant to label Marvin Harrison Jr. a bust, like we have other players who have entered the league with generational labels, is that nobody wants to admit that their evaluation when it came to Marvin Harrison Jr. might have been wrong. And I'm not trying to act like I was somebody who expected Marvin Harrison Jr. to start out as slow as what it has, because I thought this dude was generational too. But eventually, how long do we wait until we eventually come to grips and say, you know what? This dude isn't as good as what we thought he would be. When do we get honest about Marvin Harrison Jr.? Because MSJ hasn't looked like a generational talent in his first 2 seasons. And most weeks, he hasn't even consistently looked like a legitimate number 1 wide receiver. Sure, he's had flashes when he has showed the route running, the ball skills, the elite craftsmanship when it comes to his route running and getting open, like when he was snapping against the Cowboys on Monday night last year out of nowhere, was routing up DeRon Bland in the red zone. But you haven't really had too many games when you've seen those flashes of that generational potential that he came into the league hyped up with. You know, you've seen more so reasons to doubt Marvin Harrison than you have to fully believe he can reach his potential. And look, everybody can blame Kyler Murray all they want to for Marvin Harrison Jr.'s career getting out to a slow start. But I mean, this guy also made Trey McBride a lot of money. Trey McBride has quietly become the best tight end in football thanks to Kyler Murray throwing him the pill. So Trey McBride can become one of the best players at his position, but Marvin Harrison Jr. playing with Kyler Murray is a detriment to his career. I don't really know about that. If you're telling me that MXJ truly is a generational talent, I expect much more production than what we've seen out of him in his first 2 years. And the most uncomfortable truth about Marvin Harrison Jr. right now is he is not the same player in the NFL as what he was at Ohio State. He doesn't play with the same level of aggressiveness and urgency coming off the line as what he did at Ohio State. When he was at Ohio State, you line MSJ up, a.k.a. Maserati Marv, one-on-one man coverage against anybody, it was suicide. He gets to the league, and he goes from looking like a Maserati into a used 2015 pre-owned Honda Civic. I don't see the Maserati Marv that we saw at Ohio State in the league. I see Toyota Camry Marv instead of Maserati Marv. And, you know, in the NFL, there's just been too many games when MSJ has looked timid, lackadaisical, and he didn't look locked into the game. Now, the Cowboys game on Monday night last year still showed that there's a reason to believe that MXJ can live up to the generational label that he had. And another thing is that his dad also had a slow start to his career. Now, his dad wasn't drafted as high as where MXJ was. When you get drafted in the position that Marvin Harrison Jr. was, the expectations are a lot higher than what they were for his father. But with the pedigree that he came out of Ohio State with, alongside of how refined his route running was, you expected a lot better than what you've seen out of MXJ so far. And right now, if we're being honest about MXJ, we can still say that we believe in him. And I'm not calling him a generational bust, but at the moment, I'm going to call MXJ a generational disappointment. And that's the uncomfortable truth about Marvin Harrison Jr. He's not a bust yet, but with how slow of a start his career has gotten out to, he definitely is a generational disappointment. You can't use the excuse, oh, well, MSJ has had Kyler Murray at quarterback, when Malik Neighbors went for 200 yards in his first season with Daniel Jones, Drew Lock, and Tommy DeVito throwing him the football. Justin Jefferson just had over 1,000 yards with Carson Wentz, a rando named Max Brosmer, and J.J. McCarthy throwing him the football. If you are a generational wide receiver, you should still be able to be much more productive than what you've seen out of MSJ in his first few years in the league. And that's the uncomfortable truth about MSJ. He's not finished. He's not a generational bust at the moment, but he is a generational disappointment. And I feel like it's fair to admit that about him. I'm not saying that he can't end up living up to his ceiling. I got him on a handful of my fantasy teams. Trust me, I believe that Marvin Harrison Jr. will figure it out. But the quarterback situation isn't really that better. If anything, it's worse. So, I mean, you got worse at quarterback. So what excuses are we going to make for MSJ? We're going to keep making excuses for this guy again next year around this time, entering year 4, if he doesn't have a 1,000-yard campaign? I don't know, man. I think we got to start being a little bit more honest and a little bit more truthful about what MSJ currently is at the moment. Marvin Harrison Jr. isn't the only Ohio State receiver that we have to talk about. We got to talk about the uncomfortable truth about Jeremiah Smith, which, in my opinion, Jeremiah Smith is already an elite NFL caliber wide receiver who just somehow happens to still be playing college football. And a few days ago, I dropped the reel on Instagram and TikTok. It was the trend, speak when you see a better player. And I did this for Trevor Lawrence. On this day, I felt like doing Jeremiah Smith, but instead of comparing him to his contemporaries, which that would have been no fun because we obviously know that there's no receiver better than Jeremiah Smith right now in college football. I decided to compare him to NFL wide receivers. And I got a lot of backlash for this because apparently there's some unwritten law that I didn't know about that doesn't allow you to compare a guy who's supposed to be a generational wide receiver, who's supposed to be in the same tier of receiver prospects as Jamar Chase, Julio Jones, Randy Moss, and Calvin Johnson, to receivers that are already in the game because he hasn't taken an NFL snap. And that's just insane to me because, you know, NFL general managers do the same thing. NFL general managers, what they get paid to do is project how college players are and how good they are translates to the NFL. That's what they get paid millions to do. They get paid millions to project how good these guys are in college translates to the next level. And after Jeremiah Smith's true freshman season, when he was the wide receiver one on the national championship team that had 2 future first-round draft picks at receiver on it, and Emeka Egbuka and Cornell Tate, there were NFL GMs and scouts already saying that if he was eligible to declare for the draft after his true freshman season, he would have been a top 5 pick. Essentially, Jeremiah Smith is a top 10 NFL receiver that somehow is still playing college football because he's not eligible to play in the NFL. Sometimes when you have guys like Jeremiah Smith, it's just obvious that they're going to be an all-time great. Just like how it was obvious when you watch Calvin Johnson and Julio Jones play in college, they were going to be dogs in the NFL because they were just much better than everybody else they were going up against. Jeremiah Smith is so good that he makes most of the corners that are lining up against him look like they're going to be Amazon workers after their college football careers are over. That's how good this brother is. This brother was 18 years old, getting triple team in the semifinals against Texas, who, by the way, had a first-round corner in Jahdae Barron. So you get mad at me for saying that I would take Jeremiah Smith over guys that most people perceive as top 10 receivers, but you don't really understand how projection in the NFL works. If Jeremiah Smith is possibly a top 3 pick in next year's draft, what teams are essentially saying is that drafting this guy in the top 3 makes our team much better than trading for a proven wide receiver or signing a proven vet in free agency, because we perceive Jeremiah Smith to already be a much better player, a player who can have a bigger impact in the now and the later for us than what anybody we could get in free agency or via trade could do. So if you're telling me that Jeremiah Smith can't be compared to any receiver in the NFL because he isn't in the NFL, what the hell is the point of having the draft to begin with? Because that's what the draft is. When the Arizona Cardinals shocked the world and they took Jeremiah Love 3rd overall, they essentially were saying, we feel Jeremiah Love is already an elite running back, even though we haven't seen him play an NFL snap, just based on what we've seen on film as far as his skill set and his traits. We feel when he gets to the league, he automatically is going to translate into one of the premier backs in the league, and that's why he's getting paid the salary that he's getting. He's one of the highest paid backs in the NFL at the moment, despite not playing a single down in the NFL yet, because the Cardinals, their GM, their front office, essentially were projecting Jeremiah Love when they were doing their due diligence on him coming out of Notre Dame. They were saying that this guy is so good based on his college film, he already is the equivalent to an elite running back in the league. That's how these scouts and these general managers think when they are evaluating these players. Because if you're going to take a non-premium position that high in the draft, especially in the top 5, this dude better be able to come in and instantly be one of the best at his position. Because if not, it kind of is a little bit of a wasted pick. And another thing is, there seems to be a lot of PTSD to fully label Jeremiah Smith what he truly is, a generational wide receiver, because Marvin Harrison Jr. had the same label and he hasn't worked out. Newsflash, Jeremiah Smith is better than Marvin Harrison Jr. Not just as a player right now, but he is a much better player than what MXJ was at Ohio State. At 18 years old, Jeremiah Smith, fresh out of high school, became the wide receiver one on a national championship team that also had Emeka Egbuka and Cornell Tate, who went in the top 5. How many people have their wide receiver 2 go in the top 5? Not that often. The fact that Cornell Tate was a top 5 pick and he wasn't Ohio State's wide receiver 1 tells you how good of a wide receiver Jeremiah Smith is. Oh, if Jeremiah Smith is so good, why has he won a Biletnikoff? Why he hasn't had a 2,000-yard or 18,000-yard season? Because he's at Ohio State. Ohio State is such a great program that you don't really need to force feed a guy like Jeremiah Smith. You don't really need to force Jeremiah Smith to put up these godly numbers, since you have a bunch of NFL quality wide receivers lining up with him, just not on his level. So when you have such a big target share, it's going to reduce the kinds of numbers that Jeremiah Smith could put up. If Jeremiah Smith was playing for Sam Houston State, the brother would have already broken the single season receiving yardage record. That's how good this guy is. This guy chooses to share the workload. He chooses to let other guys eat. That's why he went to Ohio State, because if he truly was a guy that was selfish and about his numbers, he could have went somewhere else that didn't really have the history of wide receiver development that Ohio State has. Jeremiah Smith's true freshman campaign was better than any season Julio Jones put up his 3 years at Alabama. It took Calvin Johnson his 3rd season at Georgia Tech to surpass any of the first 2 seasons Jeremiah Smith has had at Ohio State. And we're talking like this guy isn't already built like an NFL receiver. The average NFL receiver is anywhere between 5'11" and 6'1" and weighs about 200 pounds. Jeremiah Smith is 6'3", 230 pounds, and allegedly runs somewhere in the 4.3s. This is not a normal wide receiver. This is a wide receiver that has a game that is so well-rounded. There's not really an overwhelming flaw that you can really nitpick about him. The guy is a great route runner. He's elite after the catch. He's a running back when he gets the ball in the open field, and he can win 50-50 balls. He can win one-on-one in the red zone. Any role, any offense, you can put Jeremiah Smith in. That's what makes him generational. There is nothing about Jeremiah Smith's game that screams, this is only going to work in college. This guy is already an NFL receiver from a size and athleticism standpoint. It's kind of unfair when you watch these other corners in college that are playing for Ball State have to guard Jeremiah Smith, because these guys don't know the kind of player that they're guarding. They are essentially guarding a guy that is too good to really be playing college football anymore. He's only playing college football because of the NFL's eligibility rules. And if you ever play high school football and you've ever went up against a 5-star recruit or a guy that was now playing in the NFL, you could tell when the guy was him. Like, I heard a story, somebody on TikTok talking about the time they played Jair Alexander when he was in high school, when they played DK Metcalf, Myles Garrett, or A.J. Brown. When you're playing a guy like a Jeremiah Smith, you just can tell that the guy you're playing up against is one of one. He's special. He's not like everybody else. And from the first snap I saw Jeremiah Smith play against Oregon, I could tell this guy was different. He was not overhyped. The route running, the explosiveness, the fluidity that he has coming in and out of his breaks for a guy of his size shouldn't be legal. Jeremiah Smith is one of these kinds of players that only comes around maybe once or twice every 20 years. You don't see receivers like Jeremiah Smith very often. And with certain players like Jeremiah Smith, you don't have to overthink it. When we saw Calvin Johnson, Julio Jones, Myles Garrett, Jamar Chase, Nick Bosa, the traits, the skill set that those guys possessed and showed on film coming out of college made it so obvious that they belonged in the NFL before they even arrived and played a single snap in it. Jeremiah Smith belongs in that category. This is a grown-ass man. This dude was a wide receiver one over Emeka Egbuka and Cornell Tate, two guys that went in the first round on a national championship team at 18 years old. I'm not calling Jeremiah Smith a top 10 receiver because I feel like he already is better than these guys despite not playing a single snap. I'm saying from a skill set standpoint, he has the skill set to the equivalent of what a top 10 wide receiver in the NFL looks like. Because if you're asking me, if you're lining up Jeremiah Smith with a bunch of other wide receivers, if you're telling me who would I rather have now, I'd rather have Jeremiah Smith because of how good he is right now and how good he's going to be in the future, because this guy isn't done developing. This guy is only going to get faster. He's only going to get bigger, and he's only going to continue to improve what already is an elite skill set for a guy his age coming out of college. The uncomfortable truth about Jeremiah Smith is that he doesn't need to be playing in an NFL jersey for us to already recognize that this is an elite NFL caliber wide receiver, which the only thing keeping him from playing in the NFL and proving it is college football's and the NFL's eligibility rules. That's really it. Some of you guys are overthinking it when it comes to Jeremiah Smith. The guy has the size, he has the talent, and you keep saying, well, he hasn't played a single game in the NFL, so you can't say. Some guys you just know. The last thing I want to hit on before we get up on out of here, I have an uncharacteristic amount of confidence in the Dallas Cowboys going into this season. Now, you may be saying to yourself, JT, you have confidence in the Cowboys after everything that they always do in the offseason. They always get overhyped and never really do anything once the season starts. I feel like this season could be very different from the ones that we've seen the Cowboys have in years past. They went 7-9-1 last season with the offense that was second in the NFL in yards, averaging nearly 28 points per game, with a defense that gave up just as many points as what the Cowboys were scoring on offense. So if you're nearly a fringe playoff team with this prolific of an offense and this bad of a defense, with the small changes that the Cowboys have made in the offseason, they didn't go big game hunting. You would have loved to have Max Crosby. You would have loved to add another big name pass rusher to this defense. Getting Rashawn Gary, drafting Caleb Downs, signing Jalen Thompson in free agency. These are three moves that I feel are dramatically going to improve the Cowboys defense. Now, they're going to go from having the worst defense in the league to one of the best defenses in the league overnight. I don't expect that kind of jump, but the Cowboys defense doesn't need to make that kind of jump. It just needs to not be a freaking liability, because the Dallas Cowboys actually have their best chance of making it to the NFC Championship than they've had in all my 23 years being on this earth. With how good their offense is, there's not a defense good enough to really slow it down, unless you're telling me the Cowboys are going to see the Seattle Seahawks in the playoffs. That'll probably be the only defense that can give them problems. They can score on the 49ers. They can score on the Rams, even if they have Myles Garrett, because the Cowboys have one of the best offensive lines in the league. They have one of the best receiving duos in the league. They have one of the best quarterbacks in the league, and Dak Prescott. And we forget about how good Javonte Williams was. I felt he should have won Comeback Player of the Year last season. This dude had one of the best comeback stories in the NFL, and he didn't win it for some reason. So if the Cowboys just have an okay defense, this team can do some damage in the postseason. If you have an offense that's putting up nearly 30 points per game, you're a borderline dark horse sleeper Super Bowl contender. Because we saw the Bengals go to the Super Bowl a few years ago Not because they were the most talented, not because they were the most complete, because they had an elite offense and elite defense, but they made it to the Super Bowl that year in 2021 because of the matchups that they had in the playoffs. And they always say matchups make fights or styles make fights. And depending on how the playoff field looks in the NFC, if the Cowboys are going up against a bunch of teams that have good offenses but not great defenses, I like the Cowboys to win those games. If you're telling me that the Cowboys are going up against the Packers or the Bears in the first round of playoffs this year, I like the Cowboys. Same thing with the Cincinnati Bengals. When the Cincinnati Bengals lost to the Rams in the Super Bowl, their path to the Super Bowl was a matchup favorable path because they were going up against teams that didn't have good secondaries. And they were able to take advantage of that because the strength of the Bengals that year was how prolific they were throwing the football with Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase, and T. Higgins. And the Dallas Cowboys have a team that is built a lot similarly to that team that we saw the Bengals lose in the Super Bowl against the Rams with. Just with, I feel, a much better offensive line and a slightly much better defense. I'm picking the Dallas Cowboys to win the NFC East this year. The Dallas Cowboys have less moving parts that I'm skeptical about compared to the Eagles. The Eagles, you have an offensive coordinator that's going to be in charge of running one of the most complex offensive systems in NFL history, a Kyle Shanahan offense, and he's only been a coach in the NFL for what is now his third season. I don't expect that to go that well. The Dallas Cowboys, sure, they got an inexperienced defensive coordinator, the youngest defensive coordinator in Cowboys history, but this isn't a guy that has 3 years of coaching experience. Christian Parker has been coaching the NFL for a very long time. He has coached up Cooper DeJean and Quinyon Mitchell, along with tons of other very good NFL cornerbacks. And another thing is that Brian Schottenheimer, believe it or not, he may be the best hire that Jerry Jones has made in a very long time. A red flag that you have a bad head coach is he specializes on one side of the football, and that side ends up being the worst side of the ball for your team that season. A green flag that you got to ride at head coach is a guy that specializes on one side of the ball, and that ends up being the best side of the ball for your team, which was the case for the Cowboys last year. Brian Schottenheimer, he never called plays for the Cowboys. He was still on the staff from the Mike McCarthy regime, but Kellen Moore and Mike McCarthy called plays. And in Mike McCarthy's final season, he took over the play calling. Brian Schottenheimer, in his first year calling plays for the Cowboys, he had one of the best offenses in the NFL and was nearly putting up 30 points per game. So that's a major green flag that this dude, at worst, may be a solid head coach. Now, the question that we have about Brian Schottenheimer just is, how good of a coach are you? Because I feel like Brian Schottenheimer, unlike Jason Garrett and Mike McCarthy, has a higher ceiling than what those guys do because he comes from football bloodlines. His dad, Marty Schottenheimer, was actually a very good coach during his time. The only thing that kept Marty Schottenheimer from being, one of the best to ever do it is that his teams just couldn't get it done come playoff time. Can Brian Schottenheimer have more success in the postseason than what his dad was able to? Because I believe that he can. This guy knows offense. That's his specialty, and that was the best side of the ball for the Cowboys last year. So that's a positive green flag that you have a head coach that knows what he's doing when it comes to his side of the ball. And when you look at the coaches that Jerry Jones has hired, most of the times these guys were just above average at best, and they got exposed in the playoffs because in spite of how good your team may be, the teams that go the furthest in the playoffs aren't the most talented. They're the best coached. So for the Cowboys, you may actually have a coach that isn't a beneficiary of the squad that Jerry Jones is putting together. You actually have a guy that can elevate the talent that's on the team, the talent that's in the room, especially on offense. The Cowboys have a very specific path to winning the NFC. I'm not saying that they should be the favorites, but they do have a path. It just depends on the matchup. The Cowboys are a matchup team. When you have an offense scoring nearly 30 points per game, you match up well with a lot of teams. So I think that the Cowboys this season, this could be one of the best years that they've had in recent memory. Hell, this could be the best season that a lot of you guys that are Gen Z around my age have ever seen the Cowboys have, because I've never seen the Cowboys have a season in all my years being on this planet where it felt like they had an actual shot at winning the Super Bowl. Now, I don't feel like they have a shot at winning the Super Bowl this year, but I do feel like the Cowboys could at least be in the NFC Championship this year, best case scenario, if everything goes right. But I've never been more high on the Cowboys than what I currently am right now. Last season I said this, but then I changed my prediction at the last minute, which I was right to do that because the Michael Parsons situation just got too weird for me, and that's why I switched up on the Cowboys. But this season, I feel this is the year the Cowboys should win this division, get to the playoffs, and maybe possibly get to the NFC Championship. This is it for this episode of the JT Sports Podcast. I appreciate you guys for tuning in. Make sure that you smash that like button, subscribe, hit that bell icon so you do not miss when we drop new content. Follow us at JT Sports _. You can find us on Instagram, X, TikTok. Any questions that you would like answered, any topics that you would like discussed on a future episode, add us on Instagram, at X, or hit us up in the DMs and we will get to it. Check us out. We are not just a YouTube channel. We are a podcast. You can find this episode along with all of our others in audio format, wherever you get your podcast from, Apple, Spotify. The links are down in the description below. If you enjoyed this episode, you want to support the grind, please give us a 5-star review, share the pod, friends, family, whoever that you know loves football, share the word of JT Sports. And lastly, we want to talk football with you. We want to talk ball wherever you're at, any time of the day, in the JT Sports Discord server. Go ahead and join. I appreciate you guys for tuning in, and I will see you guys tomorrow with another episode